G'day, Aussie Ben. Now, I'd left you with the last video with a confused bit of slime. Now, the confusion comes from my confusion. I thought that by default the slime was actually facing to the right, it's facing to the left. So where that creates a problem, in our events that we'd set up, I need to reverse these basically. So when he hits go left, turn him back to the default view, and when he hits go right, flip him over. That'll work, we'll test it in a moment, but we're going to do something somewhat more challenging. We want a scoring system, we want a bit of a heads-up display where we can see a score, where we get a point or 10 points every time we pick up a coin. So this is tricky because it involves the use of variables and it's a multi-step process again. So once again, you might need to stop and have a bit of a think about this once it's actually completed. First thing I'd like to do is, it's based on a collision with a coin, so I'm going to go to my events viewer, and I do remember that I've actually already got a action, a standard event that I'd set up that says if the hero collides with a gold coin, do some stuff. So I'm actually just going to add a new action here. Yes, I still want the gold coin to delete. Yes, I still want a sound to play, but I also want to add some points to my score. So I'm going to add a new action, and it's about variables. I'm coming down here this time. So I'm going to modify the value of a variable. So what's the variable called? I'm going to call it player score. And I'm going to add, let's say each coin's worth 10. I'm going to add 10 to the player score. By default, player score will get created as 0. And it'll go from there. Then I'll just add 10 each time I pick up a coin. Now, by doing that, nothing particularly fantastic happens on screen. Behind the scenes, something has happened, but on screen, I don't have this miracle score suddenly popping up for everyone to see. I've got more steps to do. So back at my scene editor, I'm going to add a bit of text to my heads-up display. So add an object, text, add, and I'm going to drag that onto the screen. Now I drag it down a bit lower. I don't particularly like the white text, so I'm going to change some of the properties. I'm going to click this and change it to a black text. I could change the font if I wanted to. What's actually written in the text it doesn't matter. Okay, so purple clouds. It really doesn't matter because I'm going to change it later on. But I would like to change this so it's a bit more recognizable. I'm going to call it HUD score, heads up display score. Done. Okay, so purple clouds. That's the second stage of things done. I forgot to hit the little tick button when I did this. HUD score, tick, that's a bit better, and done. So HUD score. So that's the second stage done. Now there is a third stage which is particularly tricky. Over to my events editor. So far in our events editor we've done this. Take note of this variable player score. I'm adding a new event. No conditions, which is to say this thing's going to run straight away. And as a matter of fact, with that in mind, I could actually just do it up here because these run straight away as well, but I'll just keep it separate at this stage, just not to confuse things. Add a new action. Now, This is tricky. What this one does is right down the bottom, I'm going to modify some text I've got on screen. Now, the only object that I've got on screen that was text, remember, was our heads-up display score. And I'm going to set it to say something. So remember at the moment it says purple clouds. Here's what I want it to say. So I'm going to use quotation marks, double quotation marks, and I'm going to call it loot. Put a semicolon and a space. So if I did that, that's exactly what would appear on screen, the word loot. And I'll just demonstrate that just for starters. So we'll add that, and I'll come back and modify it a bit more. So let's just make sure that happens. So mental note, it says purple clouds at the moment. In a second, if I've done that correctly, that will actually say loot. Now, assuming it does come up and say loot, that's all fine, but it won't magically put a score next to my loot. So, back to my events viewer. Remember, this thing controls the score. So I'd like it to say loot, and I'd also like to say loot is whatever my player score currently is. So let's modify this. Now you are officially going to type some code. A little plus symbol, which doesn't mean add in the terms of mathematically adding, but it means add some extra information to this line of information. You're going to type in the word toString. Very important to get the capitalization right there, so capital T, capital S. And then we're going to put a bracket. And we're going to type the word variable. And then I have to try and remember what my variable was. I think it was called player score. Probably should write that down. I can always come back and change this. Player score, and then a last bracket. Very important that this is done exactly correct and is using whatever variable name that you used. So what will happen is where I did have the word loot, I'll still have loot, but then I'll have whatever this equals. So I just want to check that I've got that variable name right first, because I don't think I do. Player score, one word. Okay. Capitalization. So just to give you as non-technical as explanation as possible to what's happening here, it's using the literal word loot or money or score, whatever you want to call it, and then it's saying find the variable called player score. Now in its head it knows that player score is a number, and so what this weird little bit here does is it converts this number to a string, which is to say convert it to a word, and then I can have a word and a word. I can't actually have a word and then a number. That will cause confusion. So just trust me on that. Must get this perfectly typed. Click on OK. Now when I come back to Scene Editor, it just still says purple clouds. You'll only see the change when you go to Preview, and all should be working. You should start off with a loot of 0. I don't like that font, but anyhow, loot of 0, loot of 10, loot of 20, loot of 30. Ooh, there's a bit of a bug. I didn't get my last bit. But we can see the basics of it are working well. Now, what we'll do is we'll stop this video here, and there's still just a couple of last things that I want to show you, a few little cleanup things to fix up, but you'll need to have somewhat detailed discussions with the students about this concept of variables, and exercise after exercise that just reinforces what the idea of variables are and how to use them. But this is good enough for a starter.